Hello, everyone. Good morning and welcome to Live at the Waterhole, where we've got a lovely start here at Jamala in the Madikwe Game Reserve, just on the border of Botswana. And a nice big bull elephant come down for an early drink. My name is Ralph Kirsten, and what does the bush hold in store for us today? Well, you'll have to sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. And as per usual, please don't forget that this is a live and interactive experience. So we'd love for you to jump on board with us and send us through your questions and your comments. You can do that by going on the WildEarth website and registering. You can also join the conversation on X, formerly known as Twitter, using the handle hashtag WildEarth. Also on the YouTube live chat. What would you like to chat about? What would you like to know about? Or whatever it might be, send it through. We'd love to hear from you. So there's a few more that have joined the fray. They all seem to be bulls. We've been seeing quite a number of elephants coming down. It's generally at this time of year that it gets very hot later on in the morning and leading into the afternoon. So there's lots and lots of activity, especially from the elephants coming down to cool off and quench their thirsts. Yesterday, we spent a lot of time at Okukuyu in the Etosha National Park of Namibia, but we were also here at Jamala, and there were elephants as per usual. So I think today, probably going to be no different. Yesterday was also very hot, and it looks like today is going to be the same. And speaking of that, I think it's time for us to go and have a look exactly what it's going to be like at all the different locations. So it seems to be nice and hot everywhere across the board, except for Oldonyo in Kenya, where there's going to be a bit of rain, as well as in Tembe, which is in KwaZulu Natal. So, with that in mind, it seems like it's going to be exactly like yesterday, and lots of elephant activity, and also antelope probably coming through. But the likelihood of us seeing predators when it's so hot like this does diminish with the hotter it gets. These two are synchronized drinking. What a wonderful sight. So that bull at the back looks like he's got a broken tusk. Now that can happen sometimes just done by themselves when they, especially going through winter, when they start to access or feed on the bark of trees. And they use their tusks to leverage and break open the bark before they strip it with their trunk. And sometimes, if their tusks are brittle, and that's down to their diet, maybe lacking a bit of calcium, then they can break it themselves. Other reasons, generally fighting with other bulls, and they like to hit each other's heads and then poke each other with their tusks. So that can also result in them breaking. So Serena, yes, quite right in your comment that we're going to see, we are seeing more elephants after the rain that we've had in the last little while. The cooler it is, the less sort of activity from the elephants, particularly at the water holes. And the hotter it is, as I say, then they always come through to cool off. So when there is rain about, a little bit less activity from them at the water holes per se. There's more water around, and they're not as hot. So it goes without saying that there's not really much reason for them to come to these nice big permanent water bodies. He's having himself an excellent mud bath there. But some of the water holes are actually so close to the water hole that when the elephants do spray mud like this, it often lands very close to the camera and makes for wonderful sightings. We've seen that at the Cat Eye in the Greater Kruger National Park, as well as at Old Donyo with that very low angle. And when the elephants throw the mud, it's wonderful to watch. So, leopard lover, yeah, your question around if elephants eat farmers' crops, absolutely, they love it. They'll get stuck into mealies and any kind of vegetables, whatever it might be. They get in there and feed on it, and that's often when we have human wildlife conflict, particularly with the elephants. I know in the desert of Namibia, it happens a lot, and that's when they become problem animals. But there are some solutions that are employed. It also happens in Kenya in the likes of the Masai Mara, and that's where the villagers are sort of educated or trained or helped in the sense that there are some solutions where you can either sort of put up a rope around the crop or the vegetable garden that maybe has been soaked in the likes of creosote. They really don't like the smell. They've got an extremely strong sense of smell. So a rope soaked in creosote has been used to good effect. There's also the planting of chilies on the outskirts of the crops, and mostly the reaper chilies or the bird-eyed chilies, the very strong ones. So they don't go anywhere near that, as this youngster's now getting really stuck in and having a ball. Um, and another one that has been used as well is farming of bees. So the elephants really don't like them, and we've seen that in the Eastern Cape, where the local game farmers and having elephants on their reserve, the elephants like to push over the big trees, but it's very slow growing, and the likes of milkwoods and scotias or karoo boerbeens get pushed over very quickly from them. And in the case of scotias, it's because of those very sweet, tasty red flowers that they get on it. And elephants have got a very strong sweet tooth. So they put up those white boxes, those white bee farms around the tree, and it seems to have saved a lot of the big trees that the elephants do push over, and it really forms part of the landscape. And it's very sad when you've got a few hundred-year-old trees that are pushed over just to get to those sweeties, as the elephants want to get to. But so there are a few methods that are employed. I think the chilies, in my experience, has worked the best. Um, but it does become a problem where there are elephant populations in the areas around farms. See, when they stop like this and they go dead still, it's like there is some communication going on there. I wonder what the conversation is about. I would love to know.
Eco Training's professional field guide course can make your dreams a reality. This comprehensive program comprises 5 months of theoretical and practical training in the African bush with highly qualified instructors in multiple locations. Enroll today and receive 5,000 Rand off using the promo code. If you've just finished school or tertiary education and you want to head into the wild, Eco Training's professional field guide course is for you.
Oh, nice to see some wildebeest and zebra also going to come down for a drink. I think what's calling in the background there sounds like a Meaves starling or long-tailed starling, as they were called. I'm just really surprised to see how green it has turned over the last couple of weeks as well. There's been splattering of rain, nothing really substantial, but nice that the bush has reacted and there's lots more greenery. So the Madikwe Game Reserve, being in the northwest province of South Africa, it's one of the sort of best parks in South Africa, especially for seeing wild dogs. But it's also in a non-malaria area, so it does make for excellent family holidays with the kids, with no risk of malaria. It's about 76,000 hectares, just under 80,000, and that is more or less about 190,000 acres. So it is South Africa's fifth largest game reserve. In the savanna biome, including Kalahari acacia woodland, southern African bushveld, it's got mountainous areas, rocky hills, plains, the perennial Groot Marico River, as well as seasonal wetlands. It does lie in a transition zone between the Kalahari thornveld and the lowveld bushveld, where a unique array of wildlife share territory. And this is one of the only places where you can see the aardwolf and brown hyena together. So that's both rare species and something else to look forward to if you go to the Madikwe Game Reserve. And they say that they've got the Magnificent Seven with cheetah and African wild dog, in addition to the big five. Antelope, eland, gemsbok, red hartebeest, springbok, then of course aardwolf, brown hyena, as we spoke of, black rhino, pangolin, aardvark, caracal, serval, Cape porcupine. There's around about 4,500 impala with herds of over 100 individuals, 1,500 elephants at least, so a very big population of elephants, and herds averaging about 30 or so. There's more than 350 bird species, so always good, especially with that mix and being in a transition zone. You'll have birds that you find in the bushveld and in the lowveld as well, and a little bit of the desert adapted birds too. They have the Cape vulture, which is endangered and very rare. Pearl spotted owlet, one of South Africa's smallest owls. And so lots and lots to look forward to if you do decide to visit Madikwe. So it's lovely to have this kind of perspective of a high viewpoint on this camera itself. And all the cameras are sort of at a different position. Okukuyu is also quite raised, not quite as high as this. And so you get a lovely viewpoint from that position. However, it does make the animals look a lot smaller when you're looking down on them. And then the likes of cat eye and old Donyo at almost ground level, and then the animals just look huge, but you don't then get the view that we get at these high positioned cameras. It's quite often that we see these big bulls coming together and enjoying time together at the Waterhole itself. And I think they like each other's company. There's probably lots to talk about. I just always wish I could understand what they're saying. So Emu is asking a question around do wild elephants contract herpes like they do in captivity? Yes, they do, Emu. We've actually noticed it. I've seen it at Juma in the Greater Kruger National Park and at different spots around, but that's obviously one of the cameras that we could potentially see them with herpes. It does just look like lumps, very often on their trunks, but sometimes on their bodies as well. And so, yeah, I've seen it actually quite a lot, and you see it coming out a lot more in winter. Um, and I think that happens the same with humans as well. When the resources are low, the climate is a little bit more difficult for them, and their general health is at a bit of an ebb. So they're not as strong as they would normally do or be, and so then it starts to flare up.
Is your heart easily stolen by small paws and soft sores? The season just keeps on getting cuter. Come along for a Wild Babies Fireside Chat. Join our naturalists for the final debate on who the cutest baby in the wild is. Stay tuned for more adorableness on a screen near you. WildEarth, it's in your nature.
elephant endotheliotropic herpes virus, or EEHV, is a type of herpes virus which can cause a highly fatal hemorrhagic disease when transmitted to young Asian elephants. In African elephants, related forms of these viruses, which have been identified in wild populations, are generally benign, occasionally surfacing to cause small growths or lesions. However, some types of EEHV can cause a highly fatal disease in Asian elephants, which kills up to 80% of severely affected individuals. The disease can be treated with the rapid application of antiviral drugs, but this has only been effective in around a third of cases. So very interesting, but it doesn't seem like it really affects the wild African populations very much. And the first case of a fatal form of the disease was documented in 1990, though tissue samples from as early as the 1980s have since tested positive for the virus, and localized skin lesions in wild African elephants were recorded in the 1970s. And since 1995, there's been over 50 documented disease cases in North America and Europe, of which only 9 have been successfully cured. Those affected are mostly young animals born in captivity, though a small number of older wild-born adults held in zoos have also died, and a number of cases caused by the same pathogenic type of EEHV have been identified in both orphan and wild calves in Asian elephant populations. Sounds like our Diedrich's cuckoo calling in the background there. Once again, he was calling yesterday as well. As you see, this trunk wrap over the tusk of the one bull on the side there. He looks pretty mean with this forehead full of dust. He's obviously been throwing it over the top of his head, and it's landed there now while he's scratching his foot on that rock. Now, they do say that elephants often wrap their trunk over their tusk like this, particularly when they're in must. It is quite a menacing look that they give off, but it is believed that it's an attempt to intimidate, and so you should interpret it as such. But with the rest of this individual's body language right now, him having a nice scratch there, I would almost think that it's just a bit of a comfort pose for him right now. So Mingle Mungo, it depends. The question around if elephants hurt if they get hurt when they break their tusks, it depends. It's like breaking a tooth, because remembering it is a modified tooth. So if it breaks at the end, they don't feel it. But if it's anywhere near the nerve, closer into the mouth, then yes, of course, it would hurt. Exactly like if you chipped a tooth. It depends on how you chipped your tooth. But if it's just a pure chip, it doesn't hurt at all. And then obviously, if it's affected closer to the root, that then would definitely hurt. We've seen on the Amakhala Game Reserve where the big bull there, Koli, his name is. He's broken off two of the younger bull's tusks, and he sort of snapped them off very close to the base of the tusk or the tooth itself. And then there was a lot of swelling, and there was even some infection as well. So in that case, I would say definitely it's hurt a lot, and probably continues to do so. It will be very tender, but you see when they break it off, like we see quite a few of these that have got just the ends broken off. It doesn't affect them much at all. Can hear the distance. It's probably above this area or this camera. You can hear grrr, 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 grrr. Those are white-fronted bee-eaters. I think we heard them at Okukuyu yesterday as well, and they've obviously all arrived. Two, they are migratory birds, and a lovely sound of summer. There's an African hoopoe calling now. Whoop, whoop, whoop. So Derek, thanks for your comment. And the bush definitely does boom at this time of the year. All the plants start getting their regrowth and flowering. The insects and arthropods and invertebrates all coming out of their dormant phases of winter. And so an explosion of life, and then all the returning migratory birds, as well as all the local birds going into breeding plumage. So there's lots of jostling for space and territories and trying to attract mates. So there's just so much going on. Lots of new calls with the birds arriving, and there's lots more food around as well. So, and as we were speaking on their trunks, with elephants, I often like to speak of their body language, which is very important, especially for us trails guides when going out in the bush, as well as on vehicle, but more so when you're on foot, to understand what kind of mood the elephants are in when you're in, and you get into close proximity, especially, so that you know how to react. But with their trunks and a little excerpt from Africa Geographic, this complicated body part, so unique to elephants, often displays the nuances of elephant body language. An elephant uses its trunk for everything from eating and drinking to smelling and touching. So it's continuously moving, and interpreting its meaning can be quite complicated. A good general approach is that if the movement is focused, feeding, for example, then the elephant is relaxed. If the elephant is standing still with the trunk raised and curled with the tip pointing in a specific direction, the elephant has picked up on a particular scent and is working out what it is and what direction it's coming from. If the elephant is standing still with the trunk down and the tip twisting from side to side, this can mean that something has caught the elephant's attention and it is deciding what to do next. And a twisting trunk can be a sign of anxiety. In this case, it looks like these individuals are all very relaxed, but there might be a little bit of jostling and posturing for the reason of dominance between them. But generally, you can see, I don't think any of these bulls are in must, or we might have seen a little bit more of aggressive behavior. They seem very relaxed and going about their drinking and cooling off and scratching, as it looks like that one on the other side is now doing. Yeah, he's getting in on the back of the leg. Looks like he's got a bit of a broken tail, that one. Now, I also spoke of this yesterday, but going on with the body language of elephants, I think it's a wonderful topic. And believe it or not, the tail is the real key to reading elephant body language. Elephants are intelligent and often display what's known as displacement behavior. They sometimes pretend to feed, for example, while they figure out their next move in an uncomfortable situation. And I've seen this a lot with elephants, both on vehicle and on foot, especially when they're in must and they're sort of being very aggressive, and then they start pseudo feeding. Their tail, however, gives them away. The tail of a relaxed elephant swings from side to side, as we're seeing with all these elephants here. Nice and relaxed, just calm swings. The tail of an alert or uncomfortable elephant is held still, pointing downwards, and the tail of an upset, frightened, or angry elephant is held out stiffly at right angles from the body. So, if you want to know what kind of mood the elephant's in, the tail being a very important part of its body language. So, Bev, I would always say that the more intelligent animals are the animals that are more difficult to read. So, when I'm speaking of an elephant and how we can try and work out their mood, they can still surprise you, even though you believe that it's relaxed. It can change in an instant. Or if you think it's aggressive, it's sometimes very difficult to tell. We have these signs, but because they're so intelligent and emotional, and each one has a particular personality, it can still be different each and every time. So you've got to look at all the factors involved with elephants. I think generally all of the other animals are easier to judge exactly their mood that they're in according to their body language. So yes, Bev, I would say that elephants, even though we've got these parameters, they still surprise you, and they always surprise me every time I'm with them. But generally, you can work off of these things that I'm still going to carry on. And if we look at the ears of elephants, an elephant that is flapping its ears isn't angry, it's hot, and it's trying to cool down. So we see that a lot now, especially around the midday. And they use wind cooling over the surface of their ears to lower the temperature of the blood and ultimately their core body temperature. If an elephant is unsettled by something, they'll raise their heads and spread their ears in an attempt to show off how large they are. And when it's bulls, it's normally the younger bulls that do this. This is mostly unnecessary, as anyone who's been close to an elephant will tell you. And a head shake often accompanies this. And this is something that older cows do close to vehicles, and is their way of telling you not to try anything silly. You, in turn, can communicate your good intentions by staying still and quiet. If this movement from a female is accompanied by a few short running steps in your direction, it's time for you to move off if you can. Otherwise, you need to stand your ground. But again, calmly and as slow as possible.
Attention all teachers. Round up your bundles of joy and get comfortable because WildEarth Kids Safaris are here to stay. Go to our website and sign your class up for a special virtual safari with interactive learning tailored for kids.
Good afternoon or good morning, boys and girls from all over the world.
Spoil your kids with some wild fun for 1 hour every weekday on our afternoon drives. WildEarth, it's in your nature.
That one there now getting a lovely belly scratch on that stump. And going further on, feet and the body language of feet and general body language. Elephants use their feet constantly to dig up roots or kick up dirt or dust or to swirl the mud around. So an elephant kicking the ground repeatedly is no cause for concern. They're constantly moving, so any stillness, unless they are resting with sleeping youngsters, is a sign that something is wrong and they're listening intently, either to other elephants or something else. Rocking from side to side can also be a sign of indecision or anxiety. And what we've noticed, or what I've noticed out on foot, is that if you've got an elephant in front of you that has got its concentration on you and everything is about you, and it picks up one of its front legs and starts rocking it backwards and forwards, a charge is imminent. So in that frame is when I would, for instance, clap my hands or shout at the elephant or just do something to try and change its mind of the charge that it's thinking about. So, and I've left the elephant to do that rocking of the foot and then be charged, and then obviously managed to stop it afterwards. But when I've seen an elephant shake its foot now back or rock it backwards and forwards, and then sort of had a stern word with it and changed its mind, that's where I've realized that it definitely, you can change their mind while it's in that thought process of it wants to charge. So, and then a bit of a note on must, because obviously it's a time when elephants or the bulls can be more unpredictable and sometimes more aggressive while they're in this state. And all mature bulls experience must cycles where their testosterone levels skyrocket to around 60 times the normal levels. They secrete liquid from their temporal gland, and that, combined with a constant urine drip that coats the inside of their back legs, gives them a distinctive musky odor. Musk bulls hold their heads high with their ears above the level of the shoulders and walk with a self assured swagger. And you can just see them when they walk with that particular walk, the must walk. They do look like they mean business and looking for trouble. So when I say also the temporal glands, they've got glands between their eyes and ears. The temporal region that secretes an oily substance containing hormones and other substances. Often these secretions go into overdrive when the elephant is nervous, stressed, or excited, although interpreting the reasons behind this can often be quite tricky. Sometimes they can just leak from the temporal gland when it's very hot. So it's not a sign that they're in must, but it's one of the signs. And they will be leaking from the temporal gland when they are in must and having 60 times the normal levels of testosterone. So, just to conclude, elephants are complex creatures, and it's impossible to apply any rule with absolute certainty. And that's what takes me back to them being, for me, the most difficult to judge according to their body language because of the complexity and the intelligence of elephants. So discretion is always the better part of valor where elephants are concerned, and they should never be taken for granted. If you're uncomfortable with the situation, move away slowly and calmly if you can. So those are the things to look for with elephants, but you always need to remember that they're unpredictable regardless of these general rules that we have. And nice to have our donkeys in pajamas. Lots and lots of stripes. If this is one harem, it's a pretty successful stallion, but there may be a couple or even two or three harems within this group. I'd have to observe them a little bit to see. So just in general as well, zebra don't hold territories, so they don't sort of maintain a particular spot. They've just got home ranges, but they are sort of protective over the females within their harem. And the stallions are constantly trying to steal more females from other harems. Sometimes it leaves them open to having their own females stolen because they're busy pursuing females from another harem, and another male comes in and steals his. So it doesn't always pay to try and make the harem too big, and you generally see it maxing out at about 15 or so zebra, but it's generally around between 5 and 8 females within one harem. And the males are ruthless. They, if they take on a female or they get a female from another harem that is pregnant, um, he will incessantly mate with her, so that she either aborts or if she's so late in her term that she then still gives birth, that stallion will literally beat that baby to death, kick it to death, so that she doesn't continue lactating, and that he can mate with her almost immediately, and he can then obviously get his own babies. I don't think he's particularly thinking about his own baby at that point. It's just that she will be receptive, and allow him to mate with her. But it just shows how that we think, hey, they're lovely animals, and there's a little bit more complexity to them than we realize. And they're almost as ruthless as lions, with the killing of young cubs when they take over a pride. So the stallions, obviously, in an attempt to mate with as many females as possible, and pass on their own genetics, they actually perform almost like male lions. So blue wildebeest joining the fray, and looks like at least one of the bulls has had enough, and he's out of there. Still a few hanging around. There was a giraffe hanging off on the left somewhere. I'm not sure if it's still there. Hopefully he'll come down for a drink. So standing dead still like this, they're either catching a snooze or having a conversation, communicating, or maybe a bit of resting and communicating. Nice and cooled off, but you would think they'd go heading for shade. Maybe a bit of a dust bath, and then they'll maybe carry on feeding a bit later on. Right, so lovely start here at Jamala in the Madikwe Game Reserve. We've got a few other cameras, so I think we'll change of place, but we'll probably come back here at some stage. But anyway, for now, let's head to the Greater Kruger National Park and Djuma, where it looks to be an elephantastic day. More Ellies here. With the heat, it is to be expected, but it looks like this lot have already been in the water. They're all looking nice and clean in the natural elephant color. But I'm hoping that we get to see them have a bit more fun in the water. Not sure if Dewey, the resident hippo, is still here after his nightly jaunt. Sometimes when the elephants do come through, he likes to show them his big tusks and open his mouth and put on a bit of a display, trying to shift them off. And he often does it when the buffalo come through too. Big buffalo herds, and then he puts on a big show. He doesn't like it when these big animals come into his territory. That being said, though, they don't seem to bother with him much. And I think they realize that it's all just a show. It's always wonderful to see elephants when they head towards a waterhole, and especially when they're thirsty. They really pick up speed and they really get stuck in straight away, as this lot are doing now. So Emma Yeah, elephants do that. They're so in tune with the environment that they're constantly looking out for any threats. They're smelling, which is the strongest sense of smell out in the wild. And their eyesight's been said to be almost as good as, well, around about the same as ours. So they can see pretty clearly, but generally using their sense of smell. And when they do approach water holes, they they never leave the youngsters alone to head off and get to the water there, solitary. And it's the youngsters that are the most in danger from predators. So if they were isolated, then it would be quite easy for the likes of lions to grab one. um, but the females are very attentive, and stick close with the babies. They never let them run off, especially going to the likes of a waterhole. Predators often hang around here, so constantly on the lookout, smelling out and making sure. But yeah, I would say that they never quite drop their guard. Looks like some playtime now. This should be fun.
A change in season affects us all, and WildEarth likes to help our global family keep up with the times. The end of October will see Europe and the UK shift an additional hour behind, and the start of November will see the US shift an additional hour behind. Stay connected to nature and your favorite shows with these new times. Don't miss a moment with WildEarth.
There's not many animals in the bush, I think, that can compare with the fun that is had by elephants in water. I think maybe the closest would be a warthog, but what else? can't really think of any other animals that enjoy the water as much as these guys. If you can tell me or think of any animals that have as much fun in the water as elephants, let me know. I'd love to hear it. Oh, looks like the signal has been given. That's it. That's enough. We're out of here. Everybody at once. And they're leaving as quickly as they arrived. They might have become anxious for something. Is there a bull elephant approaching? Is there something amiss? Seems like the one that I thought is the matriarch is the one hanging at the back now. Maybe making sure for whatever it was that made them decide to move on. It could just be decision related. It's time to go. That's enough. Sometimes, and very often, can be because of something that's arrived. Are there more elephants approaching? Looks like it, I think. Are these new ones? Looks like there might be. Okay, so lovely party here, and I think it is going to continue with more elephants now arriving. But just to change of place and just to see what's going on at the other locations, let's head to the Etosha National Park in Namibia and Okukuyu. So, as the weather has predicted and been suggested, very hot all round, except for those two locations that we spoke of, Tembe and Oldonyo in Kenya. And I think it's probably not as humid, but it's probably the hottest here in Etosha. It's more bearable, as I've spoken of. Humidity really does make it a lot more difficult to bear, but this spot can be extremely hot, especially with the reflection of these white rocks. It just sort of compounds the heat, and as a result, look at the abundance of wildlife here. Mostly springbok, but there is some wildebeest on the opposite bank, as well as looks like an oryx as well. I think there's some black-faced impala in the shade of that tree, but it might only just be springbokkies. But I think there's a mix. This is lovely, and we'd be putting on a real show for all the guests here in the Etosha National Park at this viewing platform. So yesterday there was a little bit of a splattering of rain here in these parts of Etosha. But what we find is at this time of the year, that actually just makes it even hotter with the evaporation of the little bit of water that's fallen. And so the days after a little bit of rain like that is even, yeah, it feels like the ground is emanating heat. It's incredible. And then the big rains, they'll be coming in normally around January, February. There's still a little bit of time to go. and this being the best time of year, with the concentrations of animals around the water holes, the drier it gets, the more concentrations there will be. Okay, so that was just to see what else is going on coming here to Okukuyu. And of course, there's lots going on. But I think with those elephants still continuing their pool party, I think we'll head back to Juma. Where I think Sunday is the day for a pool party here in this part of the Greater Kruger National Park. So let's sit back and enjoy these elephants as they have fun in the water. Wow, and some of those little babies going completely under the water. I think, there could be a drowning risk, but I've never seen an elephant drown. But in this case, it's just like an elephant soup. Wow, that's incredible. It's almost like the signal was given, okay, let's go in, and then at a point, suddenly, right, that's it. Done deal. I wonder if there's more elephants coming, because I think this herd arrived as that other one left, and they're leaving in a hurry. Quite anxious. See that tail that we're talking about with the body language? It's sort of getting stuck to the right angles, showing that anxiousness. And we'll just have to see exactly why. The last group left when this one arrived, so maybe there's another one coming through. Oh, that is so nice. Was it African fish eagle calling? And there's the eagle. That's our suspect that was calling a little earlier. Maybe we'll get him calling now. I can only hope. Beautiful, unmistakable eagle. That is the fish eagle. Does look like it's looking for potential prey. That would be fish in the water. who knows, if we're lucky, we might see it pluck a barbel or catfish out of the water. So Miles, yeah, this day does keep getting cooler, although it's probably getting hotter. While it's getting hotter, it's getting more and more cool. I must agree. Once again in the background there, those are meaves or long-tailed starlings. Very similar in color to the glossy starling, but they've got a much longer tail, as the name suggests. There's some crested franklins and doves calling simultaneously.
The expert in anything was once a beginner. November 17th is International Students' Day. Join us as we have budding naturalists learn from our wildlife experts on Drive. Come along as we demonstrate various critical guiding techniques, from good communication to tracking. Find out about all the tips and tricks and earn your safari stripes. Don't miss out on the fun. WildEarth, it's in your nature.
Let's hear it. I think this fish eagle is definitely making that it wants to hunt and catch fish here. But I think maybe with the muddied waters of the elephants, it might be a little bit difficult. But on the other hand, with churning up of the mud like that, it might make the catfish active because it's gotten all sorts of invertebrates and things bumped up out of the mud. So it might also be the reason why it's pulled in with all the splashing about of elephants. Birds often use mammals simultaneously to help push out food for them. As now the blacksmith lapwing seemingly bombing this fish eagle. Doesn't like that he's here. All right, we're going to keep our eye on this fish eagle in the hopes that it is maybe going to hunt. But it looks like our friends, the elephants, have also arrived in Etosha. And how could we not come here with this amount of elephants that have come into the water as well? Let's see if they have as much fun as those elephants in Djuma. I'm pretty sure they're going to stay for longer, because one of the reasons being is the trek to get to this waterhole from where they would be able to feed is quite far. So they generally like to make the most of it before they then head back to potentially the tree line off to the west behind the waterhole, which we can see directly. And sometimes they also head off to the south and then also to the east. But as I say, here there's generally a lot more time spent in the water. So we'll see if today's the same. It's all the youngsters that are rolling around in the water. The adults all throwing mud on the top of their heads. Oh, that one was shooed off. The oryx also now wanting to come through in the background there, but very often when the elephants are in the water like this, the rest of the animals do sort of hang back a bit and wait for them to finish. And another reason why I think elephants definitely have a sense of humor is it wasn't very long ago, and I was at the Flossie Lodge in the Amakala Game Reserve, and they've got a swimming pool there that the elephants often come to drink from. And they came down, and it was just after sunset, and they were on the opposite side of the swimming pool drinking. And it's only about 3 meters wide, so I went down and I sat right on the opposite side, on the opposite bank of the swimming pool, on the opposite side. And there were two bulls drinking. And at a moment, the one bull, and I was just sitting quietly. I often do this at different water points where it's possible. I've done it a lot with the desert elephants. When there's a water hole in the rocks, and I'm able to get above them and go and sit on the other side of the water. And this elephant obviously knew that I was there, as I was so close. He could see me, he could smell me. But I was crouched down in a kind of bushman position, as I normally sit. And at a moment, he sucked up water and he just sprayed me. And I think in that moment, if I could hear the language, I'm sure he was laughing wholeheartedly at me. But I didn't budge, and I stuck there, and then he sort of sprayed to the side of me again, almost trying to chase me off. But I thought it was funny, and I'm sure so did he. So very iconic that we have the
Hickory dickory dock, the kids ran to the spot. The clock struck 4, the kids sat down, hickory dickory dock. Our kids safaris bring interactive entertainment and learning to the future protectors of our world for 1 hour every weekday during our safari drives. Watch it live on your nearest device. Don't miss out on the fun. WildEarth, it's in your nature.
can also be a very stressed sound, and I think in that case it was more so stressed because you saw, as we spoke of, the right angles of the tails as they were running away. So there was quite a high level of anxiousness or stress. For what reason? I'm not quite sure. There's always a couple of bulls that like to hang around. These are normally the younger males and part of the herd that spend more time at the waterhole, and then they'll generally catch up with the herd. But with elephants, definitely the males spend a lot of time having fun and playing, but females don't really have much time for that. You see that they do it, but they don't spend a lot of time engaging in fun activities. It's a lot more serious with the breeding herds, with good reason, looking after the babies, etc. And that's almost fully what the females are concentrated on, is the safety of the youngsters. And now that the elephants are leaving, you see these droves of springbok now pulling in once again. Now the oryx pulling in as well. Looks like they're also keen on a bit of a dip, as both the springbok and the gemsbok like to do at this waterhole. And like I say, with the white color of the rocks here, the calcrete that is present pretty much right across the Etosha, the greater Etosha region, it's also very hot coming up from the ground. So even though the animals have got white bellies, which helps reflect that heat a bit, it's still obviously very hot on their bellies. So you often see, I think it's to do with trying to cool that area down, where you see them wading in to at least where their bellies get wet. So the